So much everyone for being here. My name is Amanda Bonasoro. For those of you who do not know, I am the chamber secretary, also events lead. So we just wanted to start off and say thank you. I'm going to introduce Erica. I'll be coming back. I'm kind of doing the MC, so enjoy, and we will be right up. So after you.
I promise I won't say too much, but what I do want to say is thank you all for being here today. Happy International Women's Day. This is a very special day. Of the few sentiments I have to offer, the most important is to say thank you to those that have worked very hard to organize this event. And that all goes to Amanda Bonasoro, our board secretary. I think the most exemplary, or the best example, I should say, of a female leader is somebody that has a baby here, is a mother, organize this event. I digress, but I wish I could take the credit for it, but I can't, and I mean that sincerely. So thank you, Amanda, thank you. As well, I want to thank our keynote speakers, leaders of our community, State Representative Jessica Giandino. A woman of many hats, First Lady of Revere, Jennifer Keefe. And honorably, Dr. Diane Kelly, Superintendent of Revere Public Schools. I would also like to thank, just important, Bono Appetit Meal Prep for catering this meal, so we know it's going to be amazing. Floral Designs by Jean at the Flower Gallery, Revere. And once again, thank you all for being here today. And I believe our board officer, Anasha Gurma, would like to share a sentiment as well.
Hi, everyone. My name is Anasha Girma. I'm a local realtor here in Revere with the Pratt Properties team, powered by Century 21. And today I'm going to share a spoken word poem in honor of women's empowerment. Before I begin, I'd just like to say a warm welcome to each of you. I am truly honored to be in your presence today. The spoken word poem I will be reading is called Society by the poet Huffy. Society says the woman is the weaker sex, that her meekness, sweetness is nothing but a display of weakness, that her emotions are unnecessary, yet her existence is necessary for satisfaction, reproduction, even recreation. Society says a woman should know her place, and her place is behind every great man, behind every great cosmetic can, behind every closed door. Society says a woman's place is not in the boardroom or the courtroom. There are already places for her in the bedroom, the kitchen, the garden, and wherever, as long as it is within the confinement of home. Society is why she's on the news, subject to rape, subject to abuse. The new normalcy for women can often be humiliation and degradation. Society is why her gender is treated like a liability, abused, cursed, mocked. Is femininity really a disability? Well, I'm going to say this, and I'm going to say that the woman is human, not less human than a man, not a trophy, not some prize to pride over. Masculinity. Get it right already. Her femininity is not fragility. She has the right to fight for her place, to realize her God-given destiny. Society. This poem is a revolt. It has been on the rise for ages. Today, realization flips her pages. Mindset escaping the fictitious cages. Society. We will get our share of the future. And this time, we're not even asking, we're taking. Thank you.
Thank you, Anasha. Most importantly, I didn't forget, but I just want to, underline this. Julie Rinkowski, Director of Sales for Sheridan 4 Points by Marriott. Thank you for having us today. Thank you for everything. A chamber member and exemplary member. So thank you very much. Appreciate it. And I'm going to hand the mic over to our MC for the day, Amanda Bonasoro and Lily Bonasoro.
For many of you who know me, this little one is always on my hip. So what a perfect day to have her on my hip. So there's nothing else we can do. Can you say hi? Can you say hi to everyone? You just needed to be with Mama? Well, how about this? Can we introduce our very good friend, Miss Jen Keefe? What do you think? Say, Miss Jen Keefe. There are many words that we can say about our near and dear friend, Jen. Few that come to mind. She is just genuine, someone you want to be around. She is someone I look up to personally, and the list can go on and on. So, without further ado, let's introduce Miss Jen Keefe, the First Lady of Revere.
Good afternoon, everyone. I want to welcome everyone to today's luncheon, and thank you all for being here to celebrate Women's History Month. Thank you to the Chamber for putting together such a wonderful event to recognize the integral role that women play in our community. I am honored to have been asked to speak here today and to be included alongside two amazing women, our State Representative, Jessica Janino, and the Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Diane Kelly. The roles of our state rep and superintendent both have such a powerful impact on our city. It's hard to imagine that these important positions were only able to be held by women in our relatively recent history. Your hard work makes a difference in the daily lives of our residents, but your integrity, perseverance, and discipline inspire future generations of women and show them what is possible. I want to thank you both for being such fantastic role models. When the Chamber first asked if I would speak today, my immediate and out loud reaction was sure, but I don't really know what I'll talk about. I didn't think that I would have words of wisdom to share. I have no earned titles that qualify me to speak before you. I am not an elected official or in charge of the education of thousands of children. But upon further reflection, I reminded myself that being a woman in and of itself is nothing short of a superpower, and that each of us brings a unique perspective to how we navigate our society as women. That my life experience as a working mother, wife, PTA vice president, Pop Warner chair coach, program director, retail manager, and now the First Lady of Revere. These all allow me the opportunity to be up here today to give some perspective on female empowerment, even though that last title will take some getting used to. Like a lot of women, even with all of these titles, I often have to remind myself of my own value. We live with endless double standards placed on us, and sometimes we lose sight of truly how much women bring to the table. I'm quick to dismiss my experiences as unimportant or invalid, comparatively. Even when I sat down to write these words, I found it very hard to talk about myself. But here it goes. My name is Jennifer Keefe, and I am the First Lady of Revere. That gentleman Right over there is my husband. You may know him. Before I was a Keefe, I was Jennifer Marie Infantino. I'm originally from Winthrop, even though I have now lived in Revere for more than half of my life. I come from a long line of exceptional women. My grandmother, who's here today. My aunts, my cousins, who are more like sisters, and of course, my mom, Donna, who is also here today. These women have helped make me who I am today. From an early age, I was surrounded by strong, sometimes overpowering women. I had to learn quickly to be witty and sarcastic to keep up. I learned by watching them that women are a force to be reckoned with, and that women are who keep everything moving. We are the organizers, the finders of lost things, the master planners, the taxis, the ones who hold it all together. I credit them for my passion for family and friends and my ability to bring people together, preferably over a delicious meal or some coffee and a dessert. I can only hope that I have passed some of these qualities and passions on to my own daughter. The slogan for this year's International Women's Day is Invest in Women, Accelerate Progress. As the First Lady of Revere, I want to promote the continued investment in the women of our city. I know doing so will accelerate the progress for all of Revere. From Congress to our state delegation, we have chosen women to represent Revere's best interest, starting with Congresswoman Catherine Clark, who is also a resident here in Revere and serves as our House Minority Whip. We then have our governor, Maura Healey, the first woman elected as governor in Massachusetts, and our Lieutenant Governor, Kim Driscoll, as well as State Senator Lydia Edwards and State Representative Jessica Giannino, who was born, raised, and educated here in Revere. All of them make sure that our city and its women are heard. We have 3 women sitting on our Revere City Council. Our school committee is predominantly women, along with our Superintendent of Schools, Diane Kelly. As a city, we just held appointments to numerous boards that serve our city, and many of those appointments were successful, well-educated women living, doing business, and raising their families here in Revere. Chamber board members are overwhelmingly women in business. And of course, the mayor's office. It is run by 5 amazing multi-generational women who make sure to keep my husband on his toes when I am not around. We are very much the face of Revere. We are the hub of the wheel that will keep our city moving forward. As women, we hold many titles, and I am here to remind you that none are less important than the other. So take pride in our city and the role models that you are. Stay involved and embrace your titles. Share your experiences and knowledge with your peers. Speak positively about yourself, your businesses, and the city that we call home. I am by no means dismissing the many men who work alongside us, but I did come across a great quote that said, "What is a queen without her king?" Well, historically speaking, more powerful. I just want to finish up by again thanking the Chamber for always investing in and bringing together the women of Revere and providing us the space to collaborate and be heard. The progress that we are experiencing in our city will bring many opportunities for generations to come. Thank you for all being the women that you are. I could not imagine our city without you.
You know, I'm trying over here. She needs cheese. She needs all this fun stuff. So, all right. Our next keynote speaker, Dr. Diane Kelly, began her career in Revere Public Schools in 1995 as a mathematics teacher at Revere High School. While in the classroom, she also served as president of the Revere Teachers Association and led teacher of the mathematics department. Prior to being named superintendent, Dr. Kelly served in several other administration positions, including Dean of Students at Revere High School, District Director of Mathematics, District Director of Math, Science, and Technology. Thank you. And Assistant Superintendent. Dr. Kelly has also served on several state educational committees. On this special day, we would like to recognize Dr. Diane Kelly for her supreme devotion and efforts to the city of Revere and the Revere school system. the citizens of our community, it is with great honor that we introduce Dr. Diane Kelly.
Thank you all very much. And Jenna, I'm going to be using that line about the kings and the queens. I love it. So good afternoon, everyone. I have to say it's both an honor and a privilege to be here today. I want to thank Erica and the board for inviting me. As I thought about what to say today, I started to think about the incredible women and the incredible men who have been mentors to me throughout my life, but especially throughout my career as an educator. Most of them are from right here in Revere, where I've spent most of my career. This June will mark the completion of my 29th year in the Revere Public Schools. And over those years, I have learned more than I could ever tell from some of Revere's greatest educators. I know I could never name them all, and I could spend the entire afternoon telling you how these folks have shaped me as a teacher, as an administrator, and as a person, but I know that's not really truly helpful today. So I'll suffice it to just name a few who had the most influence on me, just so their names resonate again today. They include Carol Ty, Paul Dakin, Anne Marie Costa, Mary Ellen Dakin, Jim Barnes, Carol Haney, Linda Pinocchio, Fran Riga, Janet Lucy, Paul Cronin, Scott Lumsden, Joanna McGinnis, Carol White, all of the school committee members who have guided me over the last 9 years, many, many colleagues, and even more students. I am eternally grateful to all of them. But ever the educator, I thought that what we should do today is review a little bit of history and the evolution of how this celebration came to be, much of which I did not know until I did the research for this talk. And to make things a little bit more interesting, I thought we should have a little quiz as I speak. So on your tables, you will find pink sheets, if you could each take one. And don't worry, this quiz is not going to count towards your final grade and will not be part of your permanent record. One of the instructional practices that we embrace in the Revere Public Schools is collaborative learning. So please leverage the knowledge of the people sitting beside you and feel free to discuss before committing your answer to paper. My goal is that you leave here with at least one new interesting fact about women's history. We'll take about 45 seconds for each question when we get to them. I'll tell you as I speak. So let's get started. It was in March of 1776 when John Adams was meeting with the Congressional Congress forging our independence from England that his wife Abigail sent him a letter from Quincy, right down the street, saying, "I long to hear that you have declared an independency. And by the way, in the new code of laws, which I suppose it will be necessary for you to make, I desire you would remember the ladies and be more generous and favorable to them than your ancestors. Do not put such unlimited power into the hands of the husbands." Sorry for this next one, but this is what she said. "Remember, all men would be tyrants if they could. If particular care and attention is not paid to the ladies, we are determined to foment a rebellion and will not hold ourselves bound by any laws in which we have no voice or recognition." That's in 1776. It was over 80 years after that warning from Mrs. Adams on March 8th, 1857, when women from various New York City textile factories staged a protest over poor working conditions and unfair wages. And women's rights actually got some real traction, and the roots of Women's History Month can be traced back to those events. In the 167 years since then, we've come a long way. The first official Women's Day celebration in the United States was in 1909, also in New York City. Similar celebrations started about the same time in countries across the world, and some of them actually predated those in the United States. As recently as the 1970s, there was virtually no mention of women's history or the contributions that women made to the creation of our great nation in the K through 12 curriculum. The general public had virtually no concept of the role that women played in every major aspect of American life. So let's take a look at the first question on that quiz. There was a time when a bank could refuse to issue credit to an unmarried woman. And if the woman was married, her husband had to co-sign in order for her to get that credit. Some banks allowed single women to have a credit card as long as their father or brother or some other male relative agreed to co-sign. In what year did the laws change to prohibit this practice? Take about 30 seconds to talk amongst yourselves, and we'll see what we come up with. All right, what do we have? What do we have? Bingo, 1974. That's not that long ago. That's right, I love it. All right, back to our history lesson. In 1978, the Education Task Force for the Sonoma County, California Commission on the Status of Women initiated a Women's History Week. Women's History Week celebration and engaged thousands of women volunteers to present women's history lessons in classrooms throughout Sonoma County. It was just 2 years later in 1980 that President Jimmy Carter designated March 2nd through 8th as National Women's History Week, and the deliberate teaching of women's history for the first time in American history became a national effort. 1980. I'm not that old, but I was in 5th grade already when that happened. It took until 1987 for Congress to pass a law designating March as Women's History Month. And if you're keeping track, that was the year I graduated high school. So let's go to quiz question number 2. And I want you to pay attention to the year 2017, just 7 years ago. The National Women's History Museum analyzed the K-12 educational standards in social studies for each of the 50 states and the District of Columbia. My question to you is, in all of the references they found to women, what % of mentions fall within the context of domestic roles? So that's cooking, cleaning, and childcare. And then the second part of that question is, what % were mentions about women's rights and suffrage? So 2-part question, take 30 seconds and then we'll come back. All right, who wants to throw out a guess? And I'll give you a higher or a lower. I heard 85 and I'll give a lower. 70 lower. Higher. Higher than 50. Lower than 65. I'll just tell you, 53. 53. But think about that. 7 years ago, more than half of the references to women in the history books across the United States were about cooking, cleaning, and childcare. The % of mentions that were about women's right and suffrage was 20%. So every year there is a theme for Women's History Month. I have to use my teacher, pay attention. This year the theme is Women Who Advocate for Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. This is for Women's Month. I know Jen talked about the theme for Women's Week. I want to just point out the distinction. Equity, diversity, and inclusion are key aspects of our work in the Revere Public Schools. So this theme truly resonates for me. It's just so important that all kids, that all people feel like they matter, that they are valued, and that they belong. And despite the rhetoric and vitriol that often accompany the words equity, diversity, and inclusion, that is truly all that they mean. You matter. You are valued. And you belong. Susan B. Anthony worked tirelessly for equity and inclusion of women. Of our 11 schools in Revere, only 1 is named for a woman. And that, of course, is the Susan B. Anthony Middle School. Most people know Susan B. Anthony for her activism around women's suffrage, the right to vote. But she also did a tremendous amount of work to organize women's labor. As early as 1868, Anthony was advocating for an 8-hour workday and equal pay for equal work. Keep in mind that was a full decade after the women working in the New York textile factories had protested for fair wages and better working conditions. They still hadn't been realized. So let's look at our third quiz question. In 1978, the gender pay gap in the United States was 38%. For every dollar a man earned, a woman working the same job earned just 62%. Sorry, 62 cents. What is the gender pay gap in the United States today? All right, any guesses? 18. Close, lower than 18. 16 is the right number. Susan B. Anthony was also a huge advocate for abolition. She and her family thought that drinking alcohol was sinful, and that's where her and my philosophies diverge. But truly, young girls and young boys across this country should be learning more about women's history than just the fact that women took care of kids, cleaned the house, and fought for the right to vote. They did a lot more than that. I think about the incredible scientists portrayed in the movie Hidden Figures, which is based on the book by Margaret Lee Shetterly. She tells the story, if you haven't seen this movie, watch it, it's awesome. She tells the story of three female African-American mathematicians, Katherine G. Johnson, Dorothy Vaughan, and Mary Jackson. In the 1960s, as the US raced against the USSR to put a man into space, these three women mathematicians played a vital role in getting John Glenn into orbit and back home safely. And I'm going to say that that's NASA's word that they used to describe their role. Their role was vital, according to NASA. I have 2 degrees in mathematics, and I can tell you that I had no idea that such jobs existed. Why didn't we know about these women? How were they not mentioned in our history books 30 years, 40 years after playing such an incredible, enormous role in the American space mission? Access is important for everyone. Kids don't know what they don't know. Adults don't know what they don't know. This is why it's so important that our students can see themselves reflected in our curricula. This is why history books need to show young girls the great contributions that women have made. Every child needs to see themselves positively reflected in their books so that they can see their own potential. Fourth and final quiz question. In 1970, women comprised 2.4% of Congress. What is that percentage today? And when I say today, it's actually 2022, after the last major election cycle. All right, what do we think? Higher than 20, higher than 25, lower than 30. It's 28.4%. So we have made a great deal of progress since the 1970s. Since the 1970s, we can get our own credit cards. We paid more attention to teaching about and talking about the important roles that women have played in history. We've cut the wage gap in half, and we now have more than half of the representation that we should have at the national level. 50 years later, and we're about halfway to where we should be to have true parity with our male counterparts. It's taken a long time, but progress always takes a long time. No change worth making can happen overnight. Positive change requires that we all work together and row in the same direction, men and women. We need to continue the work toward equity, diversity, and inclusion for all people, including women, so that today's children have a freer tomorrow. I thank you for taking the time to be here, for your commitment to amplifying the voices of women, and for your work toward gender equity. The one last thing I have to do is check if I have reached my objective. Did you learn something new today about women's history? Thank you all.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly. That was a great learning lesson. So on to our next keynote speaker. We have Representative Jessica Giannino. She was elected to the Massachusetts. All right. See? Judy calls. She was elected to the Massachusetts House of Representatives in 2020 and began her career in politics as a city councilor at large for the city of Revere in 2012. In 2013, she served as vice president of the city council and served, as the president of the city council and the city of Revere in 2018 and 2016. Throughout that time, Janino worked countless issues impacting the daily lives of the city of Revere, as well as the ordinances that will continue to impact generations to follow. It is without further ado and great honor that I introduce Representative Jessica Janino. One day.
Thank you so much. It's truly an honor to be here today and to follow such amazing women and such amazing speakers. To speak after Dr. Kelly, who I never had as a teacher, but was a teacher when I was in high school, and our First Lady, Jen Keith. It's just such an honor to have you and to represent the women in our community. And we're so, so lucky. So thank you. As we gather here today at the Revere Chamber of Commerce Luncheon to mark Women's History Month, it's an honor to reflect on the strong spirit and contributions of the women in our community and throughout history. We're just so, so lucky to have a Chamber of Commerce that's led by two amazing women, as we see Amanda here with your beautiful daughter. Thank you. I think you are the epitome of what it is to be a working mom and to be here and to be doing what you're doing. Let's give her a hand. Oh, can you hear me? Am I not loud enough? Okay. And Erica, I lost you. Erica, thank you. Thank you for thinking of me. I'm honored to be here. And I know the senator couldn't make it and sends her regards. From the pioneers who've paved the way to women's rights that Dr. Kelly mentioned, to the contemporary leaders that have shaped our communities, each woman's story adds a vibrant thread to the rich tapestry of our history. And this month is not just a celebration, but a call to action. It's a reminder that there's still work to be done in gender equality. In the world of business, women have shown resilience, innovation, and a persistent entrepreneurial spirit. As we acknowledge their achievements, let us also commit to fostering an inclusive business environment where every woman can thrive, where we commit to breaking down barriers that hinder progress. Jen talked about her family, and she talked about the women in her family, and I can't help but think about how I got here, and it wouldn't be without the women whose shoulders that I stand on. And when I think about strong women in business, I think about my grandfather's mother, Mary Janino, who owned Janino's Greenhouses. And I never met my great-grandmother. She was a force. She drove when women didn't drive. She owned property when women didn't own property. She lost both of her legs to diabetes and still ran a business, had 10 children, and just did things that were so beyond her years and was just a force. And I think that fighting spirit and that force that she had to raise, her family and that she instilled in her children really carried on through our generations. And she was an Italian immigrant, and she was really proud of her heritage, but also was really proud that she raised her children here in Revere. And when her and her husband came here, she chose Revere and raised her 10 children here and chose this community because it was a spot that they loved and a spot that they could build a greenhouse and that they could build a business and build a family. And something that was so beautiful growing up on that same lot of land 50 years later is that when I was born across the street, I could look at that family business that she started growing pansies in my driveway and see how beautiful that was, and look behind me in the house that she built, that she had 10 kids on the kitchen table, and look in the house behind that where my aunt lived, and across the street where my other aunt lived. And all 10 kids at one point had property around the corner. And it was such a nice feeling that I grew up in a community where at one point in time, if I came home from school and was hungry, I could yell out the door, "Hey, Auntie, can you come over and boil the water for me so I can make pasta?" How many people can say that, right? It was really something pretty cool. But it's that community that made me who I am. And it's that community that gave me the foundation in the city of Revere that I was able to build my life on. And I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for that foundation in this community. And on that, she raised my grandfather, who met my grandmother, who anyone in this room that knows Googie, she's a force. My grandmother grew up in Malden. She's a 4-time breast cancer survivor. She survived 4 aggressive different strains of breast cancer. She's 83 years old. She's unbelievable. You talk about strength, you talk about resiliency. She raised 4 kids. She worked full time. Her husband worked 2 jobs. My parents were divorced. My dad came back home. He worked nights in the police department. She brought me up. She gave up her golden years when her kids were out of the house and she was supposed to be enjoying retirement to raise me, to give me an opportunity that I wouldn't have had if it wasn't for her strength and her resiliency, right? And that was when she was just starting to live her life that she had sacrificed. So I think when we think about strong women, there's so many different parts to that. There's their education. That's one part of their lives. There's their family. That's another part of their lives. There's their business. That's another part. There's just so many different pieces to what makes a strong woman. There's so many different parts to their lives. There's so many different integral pieces to this puzzle that creates who we become and what we pass down. When I think about how I then got here on this, kind of ladder of strong women in this community, I'm the second one in my family to be a state rep in a district that I'm the 3rd woman to serve in my seat. So growing up, Kathy Ann Reinstein was the state rep. She got elected in 1999. So when I was 8 years old, I could see myself in who I wanted to be when I grow up. I could see a woman that was a young woman in her early 30s serving. And I said, I want to be her. I visited her in the State House when I was in high school. I'll never forget it. And I said, that's where I want to be someday. And it's so surreal to be there and to sit at the desk that her father sat at and to sit at the desk that Kathy sat at and to continue that legacy. And it's a kind of a playful joke in the State House, but they say, it's the strong woman in Revere, and it is. It was Kathy, and it's Rosalie, and now I have the pleasure of being there. And when we think about women in the legislature, so, similar to Dr. Kelly mentioned, 20,000 men have served in the legislature. That's the House and the Senate in Massachusetts since it was established. I am the 215th woman to be elected. Thank you. And it's crazy because you wouldn't think that we knew our numbers, but we do. And we know our numbers because there's less than 300 of us. And when there's less than 300 of you, you know what number you are because you bond over that, because your number is a part of your identity. Your number is a part of your history in that building, in the fabric of the legislature. And that journey for me started in this community. And I'm so grateful for that. The city of Revere has given me everything that I am. I started in the public school system, started at the Whalen School, the Garfield School, the high school, went on to Salem State. Anyone else Salem State grads? Yeah. Woo! Love Salem State. But now at this point in my life, I think about where I'm at. I'm 32 years old, so focused on my career. And my friends are all my age that we kind of are at this point in our lives. And it's interesting, I think, as a woman, where you think about what your priorities are. And for me, it was my career. I've put 110% into my career, into getting where I am right now. But I think it's really important when we talk about Women's History Month and when we talk to our friends that we acknowledge that that's not all of our journeys. My best friend graduated from college, had a wonderful career, and gave it up to be a mom. And that was her journey. And I'm so proud of her. And I'm so happy for her. And I think it's important that we support those women in our lives that want to do that as well. Because I think we're so focused on supporting women in business and supporting women that want to take over the world and lead, because we need those women. But it's also really important that we support the women that want to follow other journeys as well. And to my friend that's staying home and taking care of her family, I'm really so proud of her for following that journey and for making that decision and for sacrificing everything that she's put on hold to do this in her life right now and to make that difficult decision, because that wasn't easy either. And it's interesting because, we talk on the phone at night and we share our stories and we talk about what's happening in each other's lives. And it's so different because she'll say, you know, Jess, I hate to call you because I know you're so busy and I know you're running around. And I say, well, Edna, I hate to call you because I know you have a baby over here and you're running here and you're doing this and you're doing that. And it's funny because our lives are so different, but we're doing the same thing in such different ways. So although our lives take us different places, we do different things, I think it's so important that we just acknowledge what women bring to the table in the world of business, in our homes, in our lives, in our foundations, who we are as people. And just realize that that's what this month is about. It's about so much more than history. History is important. History is a foundation. That's the start. But it's about who we are and the legacy that we lead and how we instill this in the next generation and how we carry this forward and keep this journey moving forward. I'm so grateful for this. I'm so grateful for this opportunity. I'm grateful that you all took the time to be here today with us. Thank you to the Chamber. I hope everyone has a great Women's History Month, and I really look forward to being here with you today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Representative Janino. With that, it does conclude our keynote speakers. We did just want to thank Bob Hass for being here today on behalf of Senator Lydia Edwards. She unfortunately couldn't make it, but we wanted to set up. And then also a huge thank you to our sponsor today, the 4 Points. Julie back there has done an exemplary job. And actually, if you would like to come up and say a few things, I would like to have her have the opportunity to come on back here. We've worked hand in hand to plan this entire event, so yes, up. Awesome, thank you.
Thank you guys all for coming today. We really appreciate it. I'm the Director of Sales here, and I've been looking forward to really getting to know the city of Revere. I've been here about 2.5 years, and we are sponsoring the event today. Our owners are Jamson Hospitality Management, and we own about 90 hotels in the New England area. So we're happy to be here, and we just did want to mention as well, our owners also own some urgent cares. So they wanted us to just mention we do own the Lynn Urgent Care and the Woburn Urgent Care right down the street in Lynn. So just if you guys ever need anything, we're always here and we really appreciate you. I am giving a really quick tour after the raffles. We have brand new rooms. We renovated 50 rooms. So we have some rooms to show off. So if anybody wants to meet me after the event, I'm happy to show you around. Thank you all for coming.
If anyone would like to do those tours now, we're just waiting a few more minutes on lunch. I promise. I wore a little too many hats today. So it is arriving very short. He's here. So enjoy. He's here. We're going to get the food all ready, warmed up. And yes, no. Thank you again so much for everyone being here. We really appreciate it.